On April 14, 1935, the Dust Bowl would expand to become more than just a regional catastrophe. When hundreds of thousands of American citizens were forced to migrate westward, it would destabilize entire regions in more ways than one. This is the story of how an unprecedented day during the Dust Bowl worsened the most severe period of American poverty in history. I'm Nick Eigelhart, your host for this week's episode of The Weather Vault. To understand what made Black Sunday the tipping point, we first must understand the meteorology of the Dust Bowl. Research from 2004 indicates that over the 1930s, Pacific sea surface temperatures were unusually cool and Atlantic sea surface temperatures were unusually warm. The low-level jet that would normally send moisture-rich air masses over the Great Plains therefore weakened and shifted southward. This would result in the region experiencing mere fractions of their usual annual rainfall, as well as extreme summer temperatures of more than 110 degrees, caused by persistent high-pressure systems, creating the extreme drought conditions the Dust Bowl period is known for. These brutal conditions, combined with the increasingly dry and brittle soil that would crumble into a fine powder, would form into a series of dust storms. By April 1935, millions of tons of topsoil had already blown away, and 35 million acres of farmland were rendered unusable. April 14, 1935 started as a normal day. The winds were deceptively calm and temperatures were warm but not baking. In Dodge City, Kansas, it would reach 84 degrees. With clear skies across the region, there were no signs of what was to come. Meanwhile, a Canadian cold front had developed and began moving rapidly southward from the Dakotas. This front would drop temperatures by 30 degrees, creating a major temperature contrast. Wind is caused when air moves from areas of high pressure to areas of low pressure. Cold air is denser, creating areas of higher pressure, whereas warmer air is lighter, creating lower pressure. When the cold air mass of the front interacted with the warm plains air, the large difference in pressures created a steep pressure gradient and winds of up to 60 miles per hour. This created a vertical wall of dust moving at those speeds, whereas usually dust storms were more of rolling clouds because of the upward shaping slope of most cold fronts. Starting at 9:30 a.m., Grand Island, Nebraska experienced a wind shift, with visibilities quickly dropping to about a quarter mile. For reference, normal clear days have a visibility of about 10 miles. This storm would arrive in Dodge City, Kansas at 3 p.m. It would arrive in the Oklahoma panhandle town of Boise City around 5:15 p.m. and Amarillo, Texas around 7:20 p.m. Unlike prior dust storms, Black Sunday had no advance warning. The winds were calm up until the moment the full 60-mile-per-hour winds and near zero visibility arrived. As a matter of fact, the particularly tragic aspect of this surprise was that the unusually clear conditions that morning lulled many people into a false sense of security, which would worsen the death toll when the dust storm hit. It would be an Associated Press reporter covering Black Sunday that would earn this time period its name, the Dust Bowl. What made Black Sunday a unique moment in worsening the Great Depression was a combination of its severity and the mental toll that the years of hardship took on the residents of the Plain States. The Plains were already in the midst of the Depression, with bank failures, high unemployment, and the cumulative effects of lost crop production from the earlier dust storms. A rural Kansas woman named Avis D. Carlson would state in an issue of the magazine The New Republic the mental toll these dust storms took on residents. The nightmare is deepest during the storms, but on the occasional bright day and the usual gray day, we cannot shake from it. We live with the dust, eat it, sleep with it, watch it strip us of possessions and the hope of possessions. Cheery. So when Black Sunday occurred, it was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. Rural banks were already barely surviving, but the particularly devastating conditions of that day would collapse them altogether. The rate at which banks suspended operations was significantly higher in the Plains than the national average at the time. Worse for individual family farms, land values for previously productive farmland would fall massively, where lots formerly worth thousands of dollars, became worth just over $100. Widespread hunger, poverty, and homelessness would result from the plains residents losing their homes, farmland, and sources of income. All of these impacts combined would convince many to leave the region altogether. This leads me to the most significant way in which the Dust Bowl worsened the Depression far beyond the affected regions, which was how it forced the mass migration of millions of American citizens. Most Dust Bowl migrants would flee westward, particularly to California and Arizona. Like most of the United States, the economy in those states was already struggling immensely. When there were suddenly hundreds of thousands of migrants within a matter of months and years, the sudden influx of people had immediate impacts. Once they arrived, they needed to immediately find work to support themselves as well as their families if they came with them. This flood of new workers caused wages to drop due to oversaturation of the job market. These workers were so desperate that they accepted lower wages and did not participate in unions, causing wages to fall even further. This would exacerbate poverty in many of the regions. These people didn't just need income, they also needed protection, medical treatment, and their children needed education. Many of the systems providing these other essential elements of society were already stressed, and the influx pushed them to the limit or overwhelmed them altogether. For instance, Kern County in California would see 52,000 new residents over the 1930s, or 64% of its pre-Dust Bowl population. Okay, so there were impacts in the job market and on local infrastructure, but where did they live? Many lived in the Depression-era shantytowns known as Hoovervilles, which suffered from overcrowded and unsanitary conditions. The population of these towns would soar, and diseases such as typhoid, smallpox, and malaria would become widespread. Local Californians were fearful of the public health hazard that they considered the Dust Bowl migrants to pose to their communities. One Hooverville in California, housing 1,500 migrants, would be burned to the ground in 1936 for that exact reason. Similarly, Los Angeles police would establish what was called the Bum Blockade, which was a police presence at the California state border intended to turn away anyone who was not a permanent resident of California or did not have the means to support themselves. In one instance, they demanded that a mother of 6 children pay $3 for a California driver's license, even though the mother's entire net worth was only $3.40. Fortunately, her situation inspired mercy, and she was one of the lucky ones allowed through. Only about 1 out of every 1,000 migrants who were stopped at the blockade checkpoints were ever allowed through. Together, these pains caused by the sudden influx of what were essentially environmental migrants would take an already destitute region and push it to the breaking point. Notably, although welfare agencies were overwhelmed by the scale of the poverty, efforts to prevent the influx of migrants through methods such as the Bum Blockade would prove futile and constitutionally questionable as well. Ultimately, the poverty of the Great Depression, worsened by the Dust Bowl, would not be addressed in full until the massive job creation opportunities of World War II. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to always be informed of my latest videos.